Hello guys and welcome to episode 53 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam and today we are fighting our way to become the toughest boxer in the universe in Purple Tree's boxing arcade Smash 'em Up Thunder Ray. The game released on September 14th, 2023 on pretty much every single platform and set itself apart by its striking visuals and punch-out style boxing gameplay. Now, I've never actually played a Punch-Out game before, but for some reason, I've always thought I would be quite good at them. I don't know why, I just always thought that. I actually have Punch-Out on a Nintendo Wii, but I've never played it. However, when I saw Thunder Ray on sale on the Nintendo Switch for about €5, I decided to give it a go and put my boxing skills to the test. So will I be the champion, or will this game knock me out? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. But before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that you can support the podcast on Patreon, and if you do, you will gain access to all of the podcast content 24 hours before everyone else, and you will also unlock the Beat Your Backlog bonus vault, which will be filled up with exclusive podcast episodes only for Patreon supporters. If you're interested in supporting my one-man show, head over to patreon.com/beatyourbacklog, or you can click on the link in the description of this episode. If you decide to support the show, thank you very, very much. And without further ado, let's get on with the show. So the story in the game is quite simple. You, surprisingly, play as Thunder Ray, a legendary boxer who has reigned as a champion for years without any rival or competition. Every round you fight is a breeze, and you are almost like the one-punch man of the boxing world. And just like Saitama, you are becoming jaded with how easy each fight is for you, and after your latest win, you've decided to hang up your gloves and retire. However, your legendary status is not just earthbound, as after the fight, just as you're about to announce your retirement, you were kidnapped and entered into a space boxing tournament with some of the best fighters in the universe. Finally, a challenge worthy of Thunder Ray. You must fight your way through 8 alien fighters to prove that you are the best in the galaxy, and each fight becomes harder and crazier as you take on robots, ghosts, and even magicians. And if you've ever played the Punch-Out games, you'll kind of know what Thunder Ray is, and that's also kind of like the scope of the story. The story gets you in very, very quickly. It has a very nice kind of presentation. There are a few sort of like still frame cutscenes where really beautiful art where they kind of just move slightly. There is some voiceover that gives you a brief overview of what's happening, and you're more or less into the first fight. Or actually, your first fight is on Earth. You're fighting this final battle, this final boxing fight, which I just talked about. And then you get kidnapped and taken into space, and then you come across these crazy universal monsters that sort of look a bit like they could be in a Rick and Morty show. So yeah, the story is very light. It's very much just like gets you into the game, kind of like how Punch-Out is. And like I said, if you've played Punch-Out, you'll know exactly how this game plays, because it's almost a complete kind of copy of that game. So you have a third-person view of the back of Ray with your opponent facing you, and the art of the game is really learning your opponent's tells and making sure you dodge their attacks or block them whenever they swing, and then that you counter with your own attacks whenever it is safe to do so. And just like playing Punch-Out, there aren't just visual tells, there are also audio ones. So make sure if you've never ever played a Punch-Out game before like me, that you play this game with the audio one, because it will help out a lot with learning how the opponents move and how they attack and when you should be dodging out of the way or blocking. And Ray himself has a high and a low block for both sides of his body, so he has one on his right head, right body, left head, left body. And he also has a high and low attack on both sides of the enemy's body, and the same thing. He also has a duck and he has a block. And if you hold down the triggers, you can also use a power ability that makes your punches more powerful. So it might be that you get the enemy in sort of like a stagger, or maybe they have just swung and missed, and then there's like a window of opportunity where you can attack them for a few seconds. And then what you'll do is you'll hold down the triggers, and then it'll power up your punches so you hit them even harder. And this is also kind of linked to a meter which slowly empties. So if you're holding it down, you want to make sure you're using it at the opportune time, because if you use it at the wrong time, it might be that your meter empties and you don't do enough damage. So yeah, choosing the right moments and looking out for these windows of opportunity is very, very important to the game. Also, what happens in the game is, and what is very frustrating when you're very first learning, is when you are almost in like a knockout state, it goes into very like slow motion, black and white, and like the audio kind of turns down. And this is like your last chance to be able to fight back. And if you manage to block and counter and do a bit more damage to the enemy, you get some of your life back. But yeah, that never really happened to me much when I first started playing the game. and I always hate going into this mode, but I do like it gives you a last chance mode if you are quite good at the game and you are just, you go first into the very first fight and you don't know how the other opponent moves. It's good that it doesn't just knock you down, it does give you a chance to fight your way back. And what happens is if you manage to knock out the opponent, you also can kind of mash a button to get your health back. So between the rounds, or at least when the opponent is out on the floor and being counted, where the referee would count to 10, you can mash this button. I can't remember which one it is, but if you mash it, you end up getting some of your life back, and that's a way to kind of like get back a bit of life before the next phase of the fight starts. So yeah, again, very, very similar to Punch-Out. And throughout your 8-fight tournament, you'll be using all of these different mechanics and moves and using them to try and get through enemy attacks. And I actually found the game much harder than I thought I would. This is very much the hubris of thinking that I would be good at Punch-Out games for whatever reason. I think at the beginning, I was really trying to rush through the game because it was only supposed to take an hour and a half. So I was like, okay, I need this. I want this game to be like a quick one, so that I can make a review about it and make a podcast about it. And I was like, yeah, perfect. An hour and a half to 2 hours on how long to beat. Cool. So I was just really like button mashing like you would in a hack and slash game where you're just like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to just get through it. And obviously, when you're rushing and not really paying attention to your opponent's movements in a game like this, you're going to get punished and get your ass beat, which was exactly what was happening to me. Luckily, the game has an easy mode, and I decided to put the game on easy mode because I really wanted to learn how actually to play properly. And easy mode really helped a lot because it really taught me the tells and attacks of each fighter. And I managed to beat the game on easy because, like I said, I don't think they necessarily changed. The gameplay doesn't change that much as in the sense of like the attacks of the opponents get less. I think it's still the same pattern of attacks throughout the entire game. It's just you have more health and they have less health, so it's easier to knock them out. Or I should say maybe your punches do more damages. But yeah, it was really good to kind of learn what their tells are because most of I don't think it's all of them, but most of them, the fights themselves are a pattern. So obviously each opponent has different moves, but from what I saw, each opponent did the moves in the same sequence over and over again. So it would be like you would go into one and it would always be, even if you died, you would restart and it would always be, okay, left block, right block, duck, left block, right block, duck, punch, punch. So you could learn the pattern and just learn how to beat the opponent that way too. And definitely playing on easy mode helped me do that because otherwise I think I would have just gotten really frustrated and quit the game. And what I did was once I finished the game, I actually did start it on normal and I got probably about halfway to 2/3 of the way through where I was like, okay, I'm still enjoying this. And when I got to a bit of a challenge, I was like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I've already seen the ending on easy, albeit, but I felt like I got a good experience of the game. And I really appreciated that there was an easy mode to help me learn the fights because I could imagine a game like this, like these Punch-Out games are notoriously kind of difficult. Maybe taking a Dark Souls approach and telling you to like get good and making you just grind your way through the game until eventually you finished it. However, easy mode made the game way more approachable and enjoyable for me. And if you are someone who maybe hasn't tried out the Punch-Out games and maybe the kind of reputation of them puts you off playing them, this is really a good option for you to try out a Punch-Out game, and a very good one, like a very well presented one at that. And I was really impressed by the different fights themselves and how unique each fighter felt, even though your character only has a limited number of blocks and attacks. When I first started, I thought maybe it would become very repetitive because you only have about eight different moves, or I guess 10 with the dodge and the block. But no, I think the uniqueness of each of the opponents you come up against really helps keep each fight feel fresh and feel different. Unlike in Punch-Out, the designers at Purple Tree were not limited to just making the opponents be different variants of a boxer, but instead they could go crazy with the challenger's design. So yeah, like Punch-Out, there's like one boxer who is from Britain, one who's from Japan, one who's from somewhere in Africa, one who's American. They're all boxers, but they look different, and I know they play different. But here they could really go crazy. So like I said in the start, there were like robots, there is a character called Cobra who I think he's supposed to be like a nod to Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, because that's exactly how he looks. Like he looks like a very muscular version of Snake Eyes. Like he had like a black jumpsuit on that covers his face, and then he also is wearing like orange prisoner kind of outfits. A prisoner outfit. And he seems to be like either a kickboxing or Muay Thai expert, because he comes with a lot of kicks from lots of different angles, and they're really, really athletic and really, really kind of, when you first fight him, you're like, oh god, how am I going to beat him? But again, the game does a really good job of teaching you the tells, and the repetition of playing them helps you learn them. He's one of I think he's like the second or third one you fight. And then there is a character called Lord Warwu. So that's spelled Worw. And this character looks like kind of like a phantom who is throwing around a dagger with some unbelievable animations. And he kind of comes across as like a thief or a rogue and looks a bit sneaky. Therefore, he's really, really good at dodging your attacks. And his animations, he reminds me of like a 1950s Disney animation. So you'll punch to his right, and instead of him moving out of his way, his body will kind of warp into like almost like an S shape. So where you punch, that's where his body kind of warps out of the way. Really cool animations, and like I said, like he's always throwing this dagger, so you never know which side he's going to attack you from, and then he'll throw it and stop, and then maybe drop his shoulder and then come in with the attack. So it's just something that you're always watching, and the animations are very, very good, which we'll get onto a bit more. And in general, the opponents, they all have a really cool design. It's very, very memorable. They all have their own gimmick too, a mechanic that you have to work out to be able to defeat them. And what I like is once you work it out, and once it kind of clicks, like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, then it usually was like, okay, then I could do it. With one or two fights more, I would then be able to beat them, which felt really cool and really kind of like I had worked it out and was cleverer than the game. And I think one issue with this game, like for me, I like short games, but I think some people may have issues with the game only having 8 fights, and one of those fights is a tutorial fight, and then you actually, spoilers, fight a version of that character again later on. So it's kind of like there are only 7 unique enemy designs and 1 is reused, which I think the game retails for about $19.99. And I think, if you bought the game for that price, then maybe an hour and a half with 8 fights is a little bit, it's not a lot for your money. But I really didn't mind it. There was only 8 fights because I thought each fight was challenging enough, well designed and fun to play. It wasn't like, it's not like this game is like shovelware where they're like, oh, let's just make this game quickly and just throw it out to get it on the Switch. It's like a very high quality game, and again, if you're it's very niche, but if you are into these kind of punch out games, I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And I think if there were more fights, I may have gotten a bit more frustrated with the game and not finished it. So for me, 8 was just the kind of just right, like the Goldilocks just right number. And if the 8 fights are a problem for you, the game does have DLC called The Forgotten Jewels, which is set before the base game. So the kind of tournament you fight before you decide you're going to retire on Earth, that's what the DLC is, which I think is really clever. And again, it feels even more of a nod to Punch Out, because you are then actually fighting humans or real boxers with these crazy designs. I didn't play the DLC, but I looked at some of the character designs, and the character designs are just great. So if you kind of play the game and you feel like you're wanting more, there is an option to play more and to get more content, but it is DLC, so you have to pay for it. But what is quite cool about the game is, it's been out over a year now, and it's often on sale. Like I said, I picked it up for about €5, which was, it must have been about 75% off. And that obviously makes the shortness of the game easier to swallow. And also, if you are interested in it and you do want a DLC, then there is like a version called the what's it called? I think it's called Origins, or something along those lines. Like basically like where you get the base game and the DLC together. And again, it's always on sale, so you can go and pick that up if you're interested and want to have a bit more to play whilst you're playing. And one of the big things that drew me to the game, or the big thing alongside it being a Punch Out kind of like or inspired by Punch Out, is the game's art and sound, because damn, this game is absolutely gorgeous. It really reminds me of Cuphead with its art style and animation, but as if they took like that 1930s style animation, hand-drawn animation, but it was like still being used today with modern graphics. So if you imagine sort of a like a modern day anime, or like comic book sort of animation, but animated in that 30s style, that's how it feels. It feels just so like well crafted. The actual graphics themselves are gorgeous. It's just like the word to describe it is stylish. Like everything about the game's art is stylish. Even like the menus. It's a fantastic looking game and fantastically animated. It's obvious that it is inspired by anime, and the fights feel like a battle from a high quality animated show. There's, like I said, considering how small the scope is of the game, there is such high quality art in it where I don't know, like each sort of like loading screen you load up has a new version of Ray to like a Thunder Ray to look at, like the character, and even like some of the promotional art also has like just different versions of Thunder Ray in a different style, which just looks so cool that they have him all in these different styles. And also before each fight there is also like a new intro video for the person you're about to fight, which really just gets you into that kind of zone of like these fighters. And again, it kind of feels like you're about to watch an anime show with these kind of fighter intros, like almost like the WWE has these intros with people walking down the stage. That's how these intros in the game feel like. The only thing about the game that lets me, like the game's presentation, that really lets me down is the voice acting of your coach. So he's called C. Smith. That's the coach, not the name of the voice actor. And he is there basically just to give you a tutorial. But I'm pretty sure this voice is an AI voice, or if it isn't, it just sounds very, very flat and robotic. And I think if it is an AI voice, I would have just preferred not to have it in. Not because I'm necessarily against AI like voiceover, but just because it just feels so like I said, so robotic and so kind of dead. When everything else has such like a high quality, this guy's voice line just doesn't feel good. It's just off. And yeah, that was like the one thing that kind of stood out to me as being like, yeah, this feels a little bit like, okay, I wouldn't have left this in. Like, it sounds a bit placeholder. But otherwise, the sound design for the game is great, like I talked about. The sounds really help you learn the timing and the tells of your opponent's attack. And this is really done well in the game. And once you learn and understood which sounds preface which attacks, the game starts to feel like a river game. Like you're really just listening and reacting to what is happening, which was really, really cool. And I'm sure if you actually played the game long enough, like you practice, it's one of these games which you could be blindfolded and just like play the game completely all the way through with your eyes closed and just base your dodges and attacks on the sound cues from the game alone. And yeah, I wonder if someone's actually tried that, because it sounds like something people would try in like the gaming community. And that leads us to the big question, should you buy Thunder Ray? And I think if you are an old school Punch-Out fan and haven't itched to put your boxing gloves back on, then you should definitely try out Thunder Ray. And if you aren't a Punch-Out fan, you might find the game's difficulty a little bit jarring. However, there is an easy mode that I use to help me learn the game attacks, which is a nice accessibility option. The game is short with only 8 fighters, but each fight feels well designed and looks great. Plus, for me, I love shorter games, so it was just right. The art of the game is the thing that makes it stand out, and its animations and sounds remind me of a top quality anime. It looks and runs fantastically. It's so stylish, so fun to watch, so good to watch, and you can probably pick the game up for around €5 because it is often on sale, which I think is a great price for it. So especially if you are interested and want to try it out, then wait for a sale just to see the art in the game really, and just the presentation, because it's so high quality. So yeah, try out Thunder Ray. And yeah, guys, that has been episode 53. A little bit shorter because it's obviously a short game with a very kind of, sort of focused scope about what the game is, which is a boxing game, a Punch-Out like game. And I'd love to know if you have played Thunder Ray, or if you've played any of the Punch-Out games. If so, what did you think? Or is it still on your backlog to play? I also am really now interested to go and play Punch-Out on the Wii, because I'd love to see how they did that game, because again, it's another beautiful looking game on the Wii from the art style perspective, but I'd love to see how they actually did it with the motion controls, because it feels like it might become like a little bit of a workout for me, which would be cool. But yeah, if you've played the Punch-Out on the Wii or the original one, let me know which one was your favorite and why. And if you're a Spotify listener, you can do that by commenting down below in the episode. You'll see underneath it there should be a section of comments where you can leave one. And if you're listening elsewhere, you can let me know on social media by @ing me on Blue Sky at Beat Your Backlog Podcast, or you can come and join the Beat Your Backlog Podcast Discord server. The link for that is in the description. Also, if you are interested, you can check out the full written review for this game, which I've posted up on Patreon. The link will be in the description of the podcast. And if you're in the mood to listen to more content about an indie game with awesome looking graphics, check out 39 of the podcast about Dungeons of Hinterberg, which was my game of the year for 2024. Quick reminder, we do have a Patreon now for for the podcast. So if you've enjoyed and want to get my content 24 hours early and also get access to some exclusive content coming soon, you can do so on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beatyourbacklog or click on the link in the description for more information. And finally, just a reminder, Beat Your Backlog is a new podcast and needs your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and or following wherever you're listening and leaving us a 5-star review. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. Bye bye.